20 years. Actually, the anniversary
Yeah.
of my first appearance on air is in August. It's August 5th.
Ooh.
2004 was when I made my on-air debut in Portland, Maine as a weekend sports anchor reporter. So I've been doing this for 2 decades and obviously have covered the teams over the years a lot and during playoff runs. And, when you work in local news, you don't travel with the team. You don't, not only do you not travel with the team, obviously, but you don't travel to cover the games, right? Unless
Right.
they get into the
It's
postseason.
a
That's
big,
when you
yeah.
start to see, right? Like all of the local news outlets are sort of jump on board, expand their coverage of whichever team. And that's when you'll travel. So I had covered the Bruins, Red Sox, Celtics, and Patriots in that capacity where I would, all right, they're in the playoffs or, they're in the championship and we're going to travel, book a commercial flight, book a hotel, do all that stuff. So that was my experience traveling, covering sports. Get to Nesson,
Mm-hmm.
start doing the Red Sox sideline gig, and they're like, oh, yeah, we travel with the team. So we're not flying commercial. They used to fly commercial back in the day. All the way back in the day, teams used to fly commercial, but now they
Yeah.
charter flights. And so charter flights, basically private flights, and it's just the team personnel, and a couple of members of the media, right? And that includes Nesson. And in the case of the Red Sox, it's WEEI. And in the case of the Bruins, it's Sports Hub, and it's Bob Beers and Judd Surratt with the Bruins, and obviously, Jack and Brick, and either you or me or Razor at times, a photographer, and our director Rose. And there are times where the producers, some extra people travel. Brian Cello, I want to make sure I say his name because he's probably listening. Make sure you
Yeah.
include me. P-Dub will have a scorebug operator when we go to trips in Canada for some technical reasons I won't get into right now. But anyway, it's quite an experience, and I want to get your take on flying with the team, your first experience flying with the team, what that was like, and everything that goes along with it. You can take it whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never traveled either. Well, I worked for the rights holder in Canada when I worked at Sportsnet before I came to Nesson, and then I worked at CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And so we used to travel for big events like the All-Star Game with Sportsnet. We had behind the scenes access. When you're the rights holder, you have all the access, which was really fun, really cool, like being on the bench, first access to everything because you paid for it as the rights holder. But still, we never traveled with a team because we didn't cover a particular team. We covered the entire NHL. So all economy, not first class, like people might think, definitely not. And then I actually went to Korea in July of 2019. I moved to Boston in August of 2019, so a month later. But my final contract with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, I went to Korea for a month to cover the World Championships of Swimming and Diving in Gwangju, Korea for FINA. And that was a crazy experience. Also not first class. So as you can imagine, I think we took 2 flights. From Toronto to Seoul, which was direct, which was nice. And then Seoul to Gwangju. And that first flight, I can't remember, but somewhere in the 12 to 14 to 15 hour range, middle seat, very uncomfortable for 12
Man.
hours. Yeah. Middle seat. I mean, but yeah, CBC was definitely not paying first class government. It's run, or it's partly funded by the Canadian government. So, you can check all that. They wouldn't be putting the taxes to us flying first class to cover the World Championships. But such a cool experience. But yeah, I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is I've traveled economy so many times to cover the snowboarding championships in Utah, all this kind of stuff. And that's just what you're used to, unless you were born into a lot of money, which I was not. I still to this day have never flown first class on a plane, but the chartered experience feels like first class for sure. I think my favorite thing about chartering a plane, and it feels like first class because the seats are bigger, they're more comfortable, you can recline way further. You're not in these pods where you can sleep like you see a lot, but so none of that, but just bigger seats, more space, and 2 two to an aisle. So there's no middle seat business. Lots of leg room, which is great. But I think my favorite part is just not stressing about security. You get checked, they check your bags, you get your passport checked, all that kind of stuff. But you're never worried about, is the security line going to be an hour? Is it going to be, 15 minutes and like rushing to get there early, which is my biggest source of anxiety. It's just, have I given myself enough time? Because you have to factor in, like, when you're traveling anywhere, traffic, check-in lines, because putting your bag through, then airport security, and you always give yourself so much time that, or if you're like me, you've been late before, but you usually try to give yourself so much
Really?
time that you end up just like twiddling your thumbs at the airport. So I love that part. You pull up to Hanscom, where they fly out of. You park your car. We used to get valeted at them, which was really cool. Before COVID, we would drive our cars to the plane, on the tarmac, and they would take them and park them for you. And then when we landed you guys probably assume this, maybe you don't know this, but after a road trip, it's very rare that unless you're on the West Coast flying out the next morning, you're getting home as soon as possible. If you're in Washington or Toronto or Philadelphia or whatever, even Chicago, you're flying out the next morning. That night. So you'd be landing at 2, 3 a.m., depending on the time, as you know. But our cars, Adam, in the dead of winter, the hockey season, used to be turned on and warm and ready for us in the parking. Yes, see your face? In the parking lot. So the players get off the plane first, staff after that, and then media last. We would go and your car would be warm and ready to go. And you would basically like walk off the flight and your car would be right there. And they would also shovel, if there was snow, they would shovel it off for you. Whereas, I know, so like, oh, now I'm sounding so privileged because we don't get that anymore. You got to walk all the way to the parking lot.
Oh, I
Um,
know. It's so
walk
tough.